All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcasts. And today, Andrew DiCecco brings it to you. A lot of stuff to dive into. It's brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to ilovelylback.com. Call 856-MAKEOVER or Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4. So let's dive into some plenty of things to dive into here and get Andrew's take and thoughts, including, was there a guy on that field last night that he'd like to see wearing midnight green? I'm sure he's got a couple thoughts on that as well. Let's bring him in. Andrew DiCecco, 97.3 ESPN, Inside the Birds. And he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. What's going on, Andrew?
Hey, Mike. How are you, man?
All is well, man. And I know the big story has obviously been Doug Pederson let go by the Philadelphia Eagles, parting ways. I want to get your take on, do you think Doug Pederson just had enough? Like when that news came down yesterday, what was your initial thought?
I think Doug knew exactly what he was getting himself into when he had that second meeting with Jeffrey. He took the weekend, I'm sure, to gather his thoughts. And you know what I think happened, Mike, was I think he just got, frankly, he was just sick and tired of being told what to do. I mean, 77% of his staff, I believe, was picked for him. And he was simply a mouthpiece and was forced to take a lot of the blame for a lot of the inadequacies that were around him. And I think after he almost seemed relieved to be out from under that mess, and he won't have to wait much longer to find a job. I mean, Jeffrey said it himself that he expects him to find a job possibly by the end of the week. So,
overall, when we keep hearing a lot of like some mixed signaling here, so I want to get your take on how do you make sense of, there's some spin or narrative that, hey, the coaching staff wanted Jalen Reagor, Howie Roseman wanted Justin Jefferson, but they just it's a collaborative effort. So many times people have asked why Lurie lets Roseman off the hook. So yesterday, the thought process is, well, Pederson doesn't have a loud enough voice. He wants to be heard more. And yet, on the other side, we're hearing, well, he's the guy really that wanted Jalen Reagor. Last year, when the pick came in for Hurts, hey, that was a Doug Pederson pick, we were told. So did he not have a voice, or did he just not have the voice with the coaching staff? Like, how do you make sense of what's going on right now in the post-Pederson, 24 hours?
Well, what I'll say before I answer that, Mike, is I also think that the Eagles brass, what they do to leak certain stories to the media hours before they decide to part ways with Doug was completely irresponsible on their part to kind of do a smear campaign on Doug. We'll never know what happens in that war room, but it's easy to say that Doug wanted Reagor and they wanted Jefferson, and now that he's not here, and we'll never really know. But what I will say is Jeffrey Lurie's a smart man. I have a hard time thinking he's that obtuse to absolve Howie of any wrongdoing. I think Howie has made his share of mistakes, but there's a part of me that wonders if he's so loyal to Howie because I think he's telling Howie who to draft. In the case of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I think that he was a very prominent voice saying this is the guy that I want on the team. Howie was the advocate for that. He was just doing what his boss was telling him to do, and I think that there's something there. I think that he was kind of just following orders.
When Jeffrey Lurie spoke yesterday, he used the term assets when discussing the two quarterbacks. I feel like that's getting lost because of the Doug Pederson news, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, Hunter, the first thing that stuck out to me was he said, but when he was addressing Wentz, he called him, he had played at an elite level, and he called him an asset first. Then he said he was a talent. And then his whole messaging at the end of that thing, at the end of his presser, was trying to get younger and not to hold on to nostalgia and to really, he made it seem like it's going to be a few years before they return to prominence, and that Doug Pederson had a plan that was strictly to get back on course for 2021. That to me signals, if you read between the lines, of course, that Jalen Hurts is going to be their quarterback moving forward. If you're looking about getting younger and getting younger pieces through the draft and rebuilding the right way, like so many teams are, that you watch the playoffs and you see that so many teams are just younger and more dynamic. To me, it's all signs point to them looking to load Carson Wentz in the offseason, and then shortly after that, you hear whispers about Lincoln Riley, them reaching out to Lincoln Riley and him being a possibility. So suddenly all the stars start to align there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How much say will the next head coach have in that decision? And let's just hypothetically go with them picking a defensive guy.
Less.
Well, what's that?
Less.
Less?
Yeah.
Less what?
Less say. You said how much say. I said less.
Oh, less say. I'm over here like less. Less what? Less Bowen?
No.
I didn't know where you were going there. I was a little confused. You threw me off.
Less say.
Right, that's my point. Is like they go with a new head coach. Does he have any power to make that type of decision?
Well, it's going to be interesting, right? Because they pretty much gave Jim Schwartz free reign on the defensive side of the ball. If they hire a defensive coach, which I have a hard time envisioning them doing, I think that they're going to be less likely to intervene and they're going to give him more of an opportunity to kind of craft his staff and do his thing on that side of the football. However, I mean, if we're talking about Lincoln Riley, I know him and Howie Roseman have a history. I think that they'd be on the same page, and I think he'd have a little bit more wiggle room to do some things that Doug wasn't able to do, or that they couldn't get Doug to do, in the latter stages of this season. So anybody else, I agree with you, Mike. I don't think that they're going to have much say. But if it was the right guy in Lincoln Riley who is in cahoots with Howie, or has a history with him at least, I think that might be a little bit different.
All right, so let's go through what we know now, in that these are some candidates, and get your take on the person you think would be the best or most exciting fit. What is your take on Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator from the 49ers?
I love his energy. I love his passion. I love his mentality and how he gets guys to play. He prioritizes things that the Eagles fans wouldn't be accustomed to, like, if they're sitting at 6 and he's the head coach, all of a sudden Micah Parsons becomes a legitimate possibility with that selection. He prioritizes the linebacker position. He has a whole different mentality from the previous regimes, and I think those are some things that you would see a completely different change in philosophy there. So I think that would be an interesting one. I know he had a second visit with the Jets today, and the Jets would be wise not to let him leave that building, because I have a sneaky suspicion that he's going to have a lot of other offers and possibly more desirable spots, maybe even Philadelphia.
All right. What about also being interviewed, requested Art Smith, the Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator? Now, they're very play action. They have a horse running back with Derrick Henry. I don't know if this roster's the best fit for him, but your take on Arthur Smith?
Yeah, Arthur Smith is a young coordinator. He had play calling duties. He was a first-time play caller last season. I thought he was very inventive and creative with some of the schemes that he was able to draw up. Obviously, their offense runs through Derrick Henry, and he's a little bit limited there with Ryan Tannehill. However, he did do a fantastic job getting Ryan Tannehill back on track, which if he becomes the guy, maybe he can rehabilitate Wentz. I do like his offensive mind, and I think that would be similar to the mindset of what Howie and Jeffrey are looking for in a head coach.
How about going in-house with someone like Duce? I feel if not now for him, it's probably going to be never in Philadelphia.
Yeah, Duce is going to get his opportunity here to audition for that role again, and you won't find a single person in that organization or who's left that organization, look at Malcolm Jenkins yesterday, that doesn't have something positive to say about Duce Staley. Everyone echoes the same sentiments about Duce: his leadership, ability to lead men. He can command a room. These are important qualities to obviously have in a head coach, and I think he really deserves a legitimate opportunity to be the face of the franchise here.
A lot of people have wondered. He's made it through multiple head coaches here. He's been on the staff. What do you think the deterrent is as to why he has not been considered, or if he does not, he'll get an interview, I would imagine, but if he does not get the job, what are some of the things, and I would imagine if he doesn't get the job, he might not stay on the staff. So that could be another thing, is if they really want him around here, it's either he's the coach or they might lose him.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because I believe that he's viewed differently around the league than how he's viewed in Philadelphia. The one deterrent I might say is he's not a play caller. I mean, he had an opportunity. I thought that he deserved the opportunity to be the offensive coordinator, and they went with Mike Groh. And that right there was, a red flag to me that, why do you keep bypassing this guy? He seems to have the resume and the ability to kind of move up the coaching ladder. And they gave him a different role, of course, but it's hard to say, Mike. I'm not really sure why he hasn't gotten a fair shake in Philadelphia.
Okay. Another name that apparently the Eagles have requested to interview is Todd Bowles. Now, he was here as a defensive coordinator on an interim basis. I think it was when Juan Castillo got fired. He was then the head coach with the Jets. He has been a coordinator with Arizona. He is currently the coordinator for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, see, now this is a name that kind of struck me as a bit off. I know South Powell reported that. He has Philadelphia ties, of course. He was here, and he took over and kind of
played at Temple.
He played at Temple, and he took over the defense here. I believe it was 2012, and he when he was a coach for the Jets, he was kind of just that middling. Doesn't really have a standout quality. He's a mild-mannered guy, defensive-minded, of course, but he doesn't really, to me, move the needle one way or the other. Obviously, it would be another change in philosophy, much like what Robert Saleh would do for if he were the Eagles head coach. But I'm not really sure. I do think that Tampa Bay has a couple of other candidates that would be enticing from a defensive coordinator perspective in Larry Foote, their outside linebackers coach, and inside linebackers coach Mike Caldwell. So those are two names to watch as well, I think.
The hottest name out there is Bieniemy. Do you think there's any chance of that? You can go from the Chiefs offensive coordinator and Doug Pederson to the Chiefs offensive coordinator.
Yeah, well, it's tough, Hunter, because they're already so far behind in the coaching chase here that if you wait, the Chiefs are probably going to advance to the Super Bowl. So if you wait too long and all these guys that are on your list start landing with jobs, and you're really banking on Eric Bieniemy or Mike Kafka, or unless you opt to go to the college ranks, of course. But it'll be interesting to see what happens because he's gotten a ton of interviews, Eric Bieniemy, over the past couple of seasons. I've heard a multitude of different stories as to why he hasn't caught on to one. But it's going to depend because I feel like they've waited too long. They didn't anticipate being in a coaching search at this stage of the Philadelphia Eagles. So, I'm sure he's going to be on their list, of course. He's an enticing candidate, but I don't know if they can afford to wait that long.
Mike Kafka was a guy that, you mentioned and was a quarterback here. He was a backup or really a third-string guy, I think. He was a draft choice here. He's on Andy Reid's staff. They wanted to interview him last year to be the offensive coordinator, but they kind of bailed because they assumed that they were going to get blocked. It was kind of a weird story, but he's a young guy, 34, I think, years old. So would Mike Kafka suit their needs?
Now, here's the thing with Mike Kafka. I think that they can always have him in their back pocket because, yes, Andy Reid likely won't let him leave for an offensive coordinator role because he's being groomed to be the Kansas City offensive coordinator. We all believe that Eric Bieniemy is going to be a head coach somewhere. But I do think that if he's going to depart for anything, Andy's going to give him his blessing for a head coaching opportunity. Now, Mike is very young. That'd be a nice little jump for him, but I've always been led to understand that he had more to do with the development of Patrick Mahomes than Eric Bieniemy did. He's a very valuable asset to the Kansas City Chiefs organization, and a lot of people may not know that, but he was very instrumental for what Patrick Mahomes has been able to do so early in his career. And he has that Northwestern background. He's obviously a very intelligent guy. From what I understand, he's very innovative. For me, he would be on my short list of candidates to bring in as a head coach.
How do you feel about Joe Brady?
Joe Brady is another guy who's on the upswing. He's 31 years old, Hunter, and I feel like if the Eagles don't bring him in now, then they're probably not going to get him. He's going to have a lot of suitors coming up here. He's the age and the inexperience might kind of drive a lot of teams away, but I think that he has the mindset and the of what Jeff and Howie are looking for.
College ranks Lincoln Riley. Obviously, the Eagles have gone down this road before. Jeff Mosher reporting that they've already made the call. So, the one thing with Riley, offense, work with Jalen Hurts. That makes it a very interesting story. Worked with Murray, worked with Baker Mayfield. So obviously he's got that pedigree. It would certainly add to the quarterback kangaroo court that we're going to have here coming up. But they play no defense at Oklahoma.
Yeah, like you said, he's more of an offensive-minded guy. You have to look at what he's been able to do with quarterbacks. You named it: Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts. The offense would certainly be explosive and dynamic like we haven't seen since the early days of the Chip Kelly era. But I think what's really important here is the quarterback-head coach dynamic. And if you bring a guy like Lincoln Riley in, it's going to immensely help Jalen Hurts. They're going to be able to cater an offense to his skill set. He's going to have that familiarity there. I think Howie, not that different to us, but to the brass, Howie's going to have a comfortability with him. And I think that it would kind of, he to me seems like a guy that they would target along with an Arthur Smith. But whoever he hires as defensive coordinator is going to be one of the most crucial hirings for the Eagles because his teams in the past haven't played a lot of defense.
Yes, none actually. Andrew DiCecco at DiCecco NFL. Who is the guy that you think is the best fit?
Right now, if you kind of align it with Jeffrey's message yesterday, and I think that if he wants to get younger and grow and head in the direction of, let's say, the Baltimore Ravens or the Kansas City Chiefs, I would say Lincoln Riley. Get a young coach, a young quarterback. You got Miles Sanders, you got Jalen Reagor, you have Dallas Goedert, you have all these young pieces. Then you got to start getting younger on defense. You have to get younger on defense and get some building blocks there. But I think that would be the direction to go if you're kind of basing the decision off of the message that he conveyed yesterday.
What about the offensive coordinator in Buffalo, Dable?
Oh, I like Brian Dable a lot. I think he's going to have a lot more opportune situations that are going to be coming up there. I'm not necessarily sure why. He's going to have every team lined up to bring him in, and given the Eagles situation right now, I don't know why a lot of those prime candidates would want to come here.
Last night in the national championship game. Now, let's start with this. Pick 6. What direction do you think, with what's on the board and what they need and where they're picking, what direction makes the most sense?
If I'm picking at 6, I'm going Patrick Surtain, the corner from Alabama, and then I'm going Chris Olave in the second round, the wide receiver from Ohio State. A lot of it's going to depend on who their coach is. If it's a defensive-minded guy, then all of a sudden Micah Parsons and Surtain and Gregory Rousseau, the defensive end from Miami, these guys enter the conversation. If it's an offensive guy like a Lincoln Riley, well, then maybe it's an offensive tackle. Maybe it's a Devontae Smith. Should he make it past Miami at 3? Maybe it's Jamar Chase. But it can go. The pendulum can swing one way or the other depending on who their head coach is, and just based on the difference of philosophies.
What do you see out of Devontae Smith? I seriously sit there and I feel I'm giddy when I'm watching him make plays. He's all over the place, and last night was definitely special.
Yeah, you said the word right there, Hunter. He's special. When you take a wide receiver in the first round, you want to have special. You want to see special qualities. With him, is he going to be your prototypical X, the guy that you expect to see in the first round, that DK Metcalf? Not at all. But he's a movable guy. He's explosive. He still has room to grow as far as adding weight to his frame. He's a tremendous route runner, and he's somebody that you can get in space, and he's a difference maker. You get those guys there, and you figure out how to use him after that, because he is a phenomenal talent. And I think if you're trying to get younger and more explosive, you get him in the offense with all of a sudden Jalen Reagor and Miles and all the guys that I mentioned, and Jalen Hurts, a young coach, and the Eagles have the makings to have one of the better offenses in football.
All right, the draft process is going to be coming here shortly, and of course Andrew is very tuned into that. We're going to have a good time talking draft with Andrew that gets a little closer. I'm looking forward to that. One thing I want to get your take on is in terms of the guy who makes the picks for the Philadelphia Eagles, Howie Roseman. Do you feel, are you in the camp that feels that he has the ultimate final say. In other words, it's my way or, we've been told so many times it's a collaborative effort, but that the new coach, as Hunter mentioned, how much say he's going to, but that Roseman is going to ultimately say, look, we've been having this collaborative effort because we talked about this earlier in the show about, there was a time when Andy ran the draft, right? And Andy was struggling a bit. They weren't drafting very well. And Jeffrey Lurie came out and said, Andy has a draft board and Howie has a draft board. And we didn't really go off of Howie's draft board all that much, but now we're going to start going off of Howie's draft board more. So do you think that Roseman will actually have more of a voice instead of what he had before?
I think for the betterment of the franchise, Jeffrey Lurie needs to take a step back and kind of let Howie, but also make it a more collaborative effort with Howie Roseman and John Dorsey. I think John Dorsey is the key here. He needs to have a bigger, more of a say, and let Howie handle the contracts in that situation and that area, which is more of his expertise. But I think that Jeffrey had a bigger voice in the draft that many realize, and I think he really, once you see the results are staring you right in the face. I think you need to say, okay, for the betterment of the franchise, to avoid these questions and being put under a microscope, I need to let these guys do their thing and let John Dorsey really have more of a voice there.
Right. So in a follow-up, I guess we should say, do you think there's a possibility that Roseman is not a part of the draft process, that they get someone else to take over that role?
I think there's an outside chance. I don't think a very good one, given that him and Jeffrey seem to be attached at the hip, which is unfortunate if you're an Eagles fan because he really values Howie, and obviously the results haven't been very. The results kind of speak for themselves. I mean, they're not very boastful. I mean, he's really whiffed on a lot of crucial picks here. And now all of a sudden you're looking to try to add another receiver for the third year in a row because the past two haven't really panned out so far. So, I mean, I have a hard time thinking they're going to bring in another guy and have him kind of work with John Dorsey to do that. But who knows? This offseason's off to a crazy start, so I wouldn't rule anything out.
All right. Andrew DiCecco at DiCecco NFL. We know their salary cap strapped. There are going to be some big names they're going to have to get released. We'll keep an eye on that and more. Go to 973ESPN.com for all the latest on the Eagles coaching search. And, of course, Andrew, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Andrew, take care, man.
Sure thing. Take care.
He'll be back on Thursday. We'll talk more offseason and draft and all that stuff with him. And, of course, it is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.